Before we get going into your Hockey IQ podcast episode, I want to thank our sponsor, Rapid Shot. Rapid Shot is the smart shooting lane. It's like a batting cage for hockey players. Very cool. Tracks your shot in three ways: accuracy, shot speed, and reaction time. Easy to use. Actually, I used it when I played and was growing up. Very easy. Simply scan your phone in, select your settings, and start shooting. You can see your stats on the app and online. You can check them out at rapidshot.com. Great small business. I actually grew up with one of the owner's sons and have played with all the family members by now, just in local pickups here in Ohio. Very cool local business. Awesome product. I love it. I know quite a few NHLers have them in their homes. A lot of D1 programs have it at their rinks. So you have to check this out. Rapidshot.com. Check it out. Rapid Shot, thank you so much for sponsoring our podcast.
Welcome to the Hockey IQ podcast with my guest here, Jared Lavender, which was a phenomenal episode. We have Dan Ducart. I'm Greg Reback. Really enjoyed this episode. I mean, Jared is just a great guy. I think the last story he told was about donating his hair that he grew out for 7 years, raise some money for charity and things like that. So I think that's just a starting point. What about you, Dan? What did you see or get out of this episode?
I really enjoyed chatting with Jared. I'd never met the guy before, but real quality character. I just really appreciate his, the way he talked about how he goes about coaching. It's very holistic. He doesn't just focus on skill development or anything like that. It's really like a holistic approach to, you're developing human beings. And I think that's something that's maybe underappreciated. And he had several, stories about the way he makes an impact in kids' lives. So I thought that was really inspiring.
I agree. I think it was wonderful how he basically talked about how he goes about letting players find that platform and not wanting to yell from the bench and making sure that it's just a good rapport between them so that they can grow, develop, have that creativity just as people. So I think that was the big takeaway for me on this episode was creating such great people that they're going to become better hockey players because of it. And I think it's underlooked by maybe parents and players that are going through that process is if you get better and more mature and grow and learn off the ice, that it directly impacts what you do on the ice, and whether that be hockey IQ, skills, or just being a better teammate, it all makes a difference.
Absolutely. All right, without further ado, here's our episode with Jared Lavender.
Welcome, Jared. This is called the Hockey IQ podcast. We're going to talk everything hockey IQ, training, and more. Today we have Jared Lavender. He is a local coach here up in Cleveland. Personally, I've benefited from his coaching, and I've got a few of his players on my high school team. They were a pleasure, well prepared. So I know Jared does a really nice job, always has the kids moving. So really excited to have you on, Jared.
Appreciate having being here, Greg. And hopefully we can talk about some good stuff. And I always like learning stuff too. So that's my biggest goal. But I'll try to give some of my knowledge that I've learned in the last few years.
Absolutely. It'll be a conversation, and my co-host Dan Ducart is on the call as well. So
how we doing,
he's a
gents?
wicked smart guy. He's a Belfry guy, so he's been around a few NHL players.
I've seen some things.
Excellent. So first questions here. I'm kind of interested to hear about your coaching journey. I know you had a great, illustrious playing career. Went to a lot of places, came from Heights High School. So I'm more, worried about your coaching. What has molded you as a coach? How have you come to be a coach at the Jacks, and why have you kind of chosen the path that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I'll start off by saying that I actually didn't think that I would ever become a coach because through and through, I'm definitely a hockey player. So I was a little worried about that and hesitant when I first took my first coaching job, but came to find out that I loved it. But I first started off coaching at Cleveland Heights in their youth program. So it was a really good group of kids that I started off with, great families that I was working with. So that made it very, very easy to kind of transition into that. One of the most difficult things with that was the level of play. We had some players that were very, very talented and some players that had just started to learn how to play a year or two prior to joining my team. So But yeah, that was Cleveland Heights. That was Bantam hockey. And I coached that team for 2 years. And then after that, that's when I was talking with Bob Jacobson, and he got me to switch over to coaching travel hockey, and the rest was history. So I coached travel hockey basically 3 years, 05 team. 2 of them were with the Cleveland Junior Lumberjacks organization. 1 year we went independent, and that was just for happenstance. Just kind of worked out that way, but it worked out well. Had the same group of kids. We had a good season, and then those kids, once they went off to high school, joined the Jacks again to coach their 08 team, and that's who I coached last year. So they're first year Pee-wees, and I plan on staying with them for 3 years as well. So this will be my second year with the Cleveland Junior Lumberjacks 08 team.
So you mentioned now that you coach the Bantam and now Pee-wee. Do you prefer that age group for one reason or another, or preferences there? Like what makes that tick?
Yeah, so that age group, I think it's a perfect age group where kids are, those young players are really starting to grasp concepts, and that's when you're able to actually implement it and have them start working on stuff. So you see a lot of growth. One, the kids are starting to, they'll grow, a few inches in a few months sometimes. So like I have some kids I didn't even recognize them. We just did a couple skates this weekend. I didn't recognize them because they grew so tall and, starting to kind of fill out too. But this is really the age where you can really help to mold them and get them into good habits that hopefully they will keep for, the remainder of their career, and they go a long way. So it's really that age group where they're still willing to listen to you and they're really just starting to develop.
Yeah, that's
awesome. That is the truest thing I've ever heard. This age group where they're still willing to listen to you. I've got the high school kids. I know how that goes sometimes. You can give them the perfect argument, absolutely nothing that they can say to differ it, and they just don't want to listen to you that day. So It doesn't matter. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big time. Why do you want to stay with them? I think that's kind of an interesting concept. I feel like usually this guy does U18s, this guy does U16s, this guy does U14s because they know the age groups. Mm-hmm. So the reason why you do that's a benefit that you've seen, and just maybe some nuances to that.
Yeah, for me, I think it's beneficial to stay with for the majority of those players for an extended period of time. If you're just with them for one season, you can give them a lot of information, you can work with them a lot, but I feel like you can really help to mold those kids when you have them year after year. And sometimes with certain kids, it takes longer for them to understand a concept or understand something you're trying to coach, or maybe I have to learn it a different way to coach it to them a different way. So I that's the part that I enjoy. I feel like sometimes one season just isn't long enough to work with the player. And so I really enjoy having, for the most part, those same players year after year to work with and really help mold them and get them going.
I like that concept, but you said something very interesting that I think is kind of underrated in coaching. Having to learn it a different way, so you have to teach it a different way. So, I mean, what you got some examples that you can help the listeners out here with? So I think that is something that is a little more advanced than what basic coaching is or what people think about when they talk about coaching.
There's been plenty of scenarios where I've had to kind of teach it. I would say one of the main ones that I can remember is actually with one of the players that is actually currently playing on your team. And he's a great kid, super hard worker. And just getting him to kind of refocus his energy. So I talked with him a bunch. I was trying to get through to him, and he would just always get to the point where he just kind of shut down, would not, listen, would not work, and would just kind of shut down. And not because he was like just, being a brat. It was just because he was just so frustrated with what was going on in the game. And so in that scenario, actually what helped me was my assistant coach at the time, David Keller. He was able to talk and connect with that player in a completely different way than I could. So where 90% of the time that player may connect with me and I can explain stuff, he'll go out there and do it. Certain situations he would get so flustered where David would take a different approach with it, and he would and he would make a breakthrough, get him to open up, talk about that, and then get him back focused in the game. So for that was one of the times where I realized different players you have to approach differently. So there's a lot of players where you just you have to get a read on them, and you may see that the minute that they think that they're going to get yelled at, even if you don't yell at them, the minute that they think they're going to get yelled at, they completely shut down. And so when they get back to the bench, that's when you have to do the exact opposite. You have to build them back up and say, hey, that was a great play. You keep working hard out there. And then once it's a good time, then you can go back and kind of talk with them. So, I mean, there's just so many different scenarios when coaching that, and each player is different, and that's how you kind of have to approach it. It can be very time consuming and can be very difficult, but each player is different, and you have to try to, in order to get the most potential out of them, you have to approach them all differently. Hopefully that was explained that as well as I could.
Oh, that's great. And I'm pretty sure I know exactly which kid that you're talking about as well.
Yeah,
we won't name names, but no, he's a good kid. And
yeah.
Now he's a treat to work with, but I could see in his younger days how that could have been a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Big time.
Yeah, and he went from one of our players, where he could definitely be one of the top players, but he had a turnaround that third year, and that's what it took. It took to that third season. We had a completely different turnaround, and his mindset was just perfect every single time, whether it was practice, whether it was games. He just wanted to go out there and work hard. I mean, he could be completely exhausted, just get off a shift, and we needed him to go kill a penalty, and we'd say, hey, are you ready to go? And he'd be like, no. And then he'd say, yeah, I can go, put me out there. And that's what all we wanted. And that's what all we asked of him. And he went out there and did that every time. So definitely appreciated that.
No, that's wonderful. I guess I'm curious on how that works, and it kind of builds off the story you just told. It took until the third year for that kid to really take that step. How does that kind of maybe interweave itself into your thoughts and kind of what those are as well, on player development and your philosophy on getting your players developed? 'Cause clearly you're playing the long game if you're thinking not just 1, 2, but 3+ years ahead.
Right. Yeah. So there's a couple different scenarios as far as my philosophy on coaching and kind of player development. I think first and foremost, you have to have the basics. So there's always a lot of skill work that we work on. I think that's first and foremost. You have to have the basic skating skills, basic skills, and you have to always want to work on it and always get better. With a lot of the 05s that I coached initially, so many of them, they see the highlights and they just want to, work on picking corners and, doing certain dangles and this and that. But that's a very, very small portion of the game where, lots of times it's the higher end top caliber players that are doing that type of stuff, where not every player can do that or be that. So, but there's a lot more to the game. And even some of the top, or actually all the top end, players, they still work on their edge work, so when it comes to basics like that, I think that's where you have to build a strong foundation. Always working on those basic skills is a great thing. And then after that, what I look to do is a lot of repetitive drills. Just so it kind of gets hammered into so they don't even have to think about it, so it's just constant working on different skills, different situations. And a lot of my drills I like to have them game-like situations. So that way they don't have to, they're not even thinking about it and they're not even realizing at the time, but they're working on something that would potentially come up in a game. But I think the main thing and the most important thing, and this is something that I took away from coaching and coaches that I had, and luckily I had a lot of great coaches all the way up from youth hockey to juniors to college and pro. A lot of the coaches took the thought process that if you kind of make a better person, you'll make a better player. And so you really try to hammer home, like, you don't want players that are gonna, cheat, cut corners. And you don't want to teach or coach that. So, because at the end of the day, if you cheat and cut corners, it'll only work out for you so long. And then eventually it'll come back to bite you or your team. So, and I'm a firm believer because I think it benefited myself and helped me to get where I got, is that, hard work is going to outweigh someone that has talent but doesn't want to work hard. And that's something that we can always control. You can't control if you are the best stick handler out there or the best shot, but you can control working hard, and you can definitely outwork other players. So those are just a couple, the basic things that that I really focus on. Obviously basic skills, whether it's skating, shooting, stick handling, and then just working hard, being properly conditioned and ready to go. And then just really focusing on the players as a person, not just a hockey player, and how they can use the knowledge and skills that they learn playing hockey in a sport like that, whether it's teamwork, whether it's the effort that they put in, and they can translate that to school, eventually to work, or anything else. So with my 05s, the second and third year, I actually did a lot of goal planning with them. And so I didn't make it mandatory, but I, made it something that they could do. And a majority of the team would do that. And we would work on setting goals and then really focusing and narrowing in on those goals and then how to achieve them. So that was really good stuff. And I plan on doing that with my 08s as well. So that's kind of where I go with it. And as far as trying to develop like a good player, I think with my coaching style that I really try to set the tone early, and especially at a young age, what plays a factor can also be the family. And like I said, I've been very, very kind of thankful and lucky that for the most part, I've had really, really great families. And they're super supportive. And if they have any questions, they come up and ask me. That they're not super aggressive about if they have an issue or if they think that maybe I did something wrong or that their kid was getting unfair treatment. They would come up and talk with me. And that's one of the things that I always try to talk about and address any potential issues early on in the season, so that we don't run into any issues later on. And if we do, I can always refer back to that meeting. So I think definitely the family plays a huge role in that, because if the family's not really listening, or if the mom or dad wants to coach their player and say, don't listen to your coach, they're not going to fit in. And it becomes evident as the season goes on. And the good thing about that is that that player and that family, I usually don't have to even cut them because they don't come back and try out. And so it just makes our team that much tighter and that much better. And, just minimizes the issues that we have, so there's not a lot of in-house fighting and not a lot of arguments and stuff like that. So that makes for a better environment for everybody.
Sounds like the next team you want to coach is an orphanage.
You know what? Actually, this summer, coaching some summer hockey games, and with everything going on in the world, sometimes the rinks weren't allowing parents in the stands, and that was some of the best hockey that I saw the kids play. And so I think it has some benefits. Obviously, parents want to see their kids play, but it was just too funny to see the kids out there having a great time. None of them were looking to the stands to see, if their parents were like, oh, you did a good job, or you should do this, or you should do that. They were just playing the game and having a great time. So that was cool to see.
That's awesome. So you touched a lot on, skill development and then building culture. I think both of those are hugely important and can't be overstated. I totally agree with everything you said. I'm curious how you go about developing hockey IQ.
That is a great question. And there's certain things that I think about all the time. And one of them is hockey IQ and creativity. Honestly, I think with some of these, or a lot of these younger players, and I think they kind of go hand in hand, because I think a lot of hockey players with a high IQ are very, very creative. And, they don't even think about necessarily what they're going to do. They just have all those utensils in their bag, and then they pull it out at the right time when they need to. But coaching hockey IQ is very, very difficult. And I kind of think back to, how did I learn the game? And I really learned the game by observation. So I recommend, and that's how I learned too a lot about coaching. Whether I'm at a rink, away in New York, I learn a lot about just watching someone else's practice. Watching what other coaches do or talking with other coaches and bouncing ideas off of them. But same thing, when I was playing, I learned a lot about watching, whether I was younger, watching high school, college, juniors, pro. And so that's one of the things that I recommend. And I'll send emails to our team with clips of certain plays or certain parts to kind of help kids to start hopefully trying to recognize that. Now, obviously, whether or not they watch those clips and how often they watch them, who knows? But I think, honestly, that's one of the biggest or one of the easiest ways for some players to start kind of building up that hockey IQ is really focusing. And that's what I try to tell them. Focus in on just one player and watch that player for, a whole game and see what they do really well, what you like that they do. And that's kind of what I would do when I was younger. I would pick and choose one player here or there, watch them and see, and as oh, they did that really great. I want to try that, and then go out there and try it. Now, I think one of the biggest issues is that a lot of players, they start watching those clips and then they just see highlights and they're like, okay, I want to try to do that. And that doesn't necessarily help their hockey IQ. But yeah, one hockey IQ, I think it's it's a very difficult thing to kind of coach a player. It's something that I think they have to kind of be willing to work on.
I totally agree with that. And, so I coach Bantam also. And
Okay.
It's funny because, we do the same thing, right? So we'll send players highlights or whatever, clips on YouTube. And first of all, whether or not they watch it, like you said, that's its own, issue right there. But even if they do, I feel like I'm always trying to fight this uphill battle to even just get them to watch games while they're at home. Whereas when I was a kid, if I had any opportunity to watch a hockey game, it was a no-brainer. You know what I mean? So I don't know if it's like a generational thing or if it's just like competing screens or what it is. But yeah, it is an uphill battle just to get kids to watch hockey, which I can't relate to. And yeah.
It's amazing. I actually saw the most amazing mite I've ever seen in my life. I saw him. He's at a squirt tryout here at Geauga. He was on a breakaway and he tried to go between the legs, pick it up off the ice and do that little spinorama move. Like the fact that he's trying it means he's probably done it one or two times. And I asked him like, oh, where'd you pick this up? And he's like, oh yeah, I watch YouTube highlights. I'm like, great, uphill battle at mites.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like where we are with, social media. Because if you think about it, I mean, a lot of these video apps, they last maybe 10, 15, 30 seconds. And, so a lot of these kids are growing up used to just watching these short clips and seeing these short. And so that's what they kind of pick up on and that's what they see. And that's what all they want to, they have an attention span just to watch that and then they want to move on.
Exactly.
It's exactly why I started my clip of the day series when I got on Twitter. Decided that maybe my players need to focus on something that's not just getting a dangle through someone's legs and then roofing the puck. Maybe we should look at the details that go into that. So totally understand that and try to keep it short because, they're not going to watch anything more than a minute and a half tops.
What can coaches do a better job of?
I think we kind of touched on it. I think coaches can do a better job of teaching to all players on their team. And, there's some coaches, whether it's, and I don't want to even say it's older school coaches because I know some coaches that I had back when, I was younger that would, try to work towards everybody's strengths and really try to build up players. But I think, just being able to coach all types of players and even more so, I think you're going to find it because, like, for example, my team, I have two young females on the team. And so I can't treat them the same way that I would treat, one of the boys on my team. I have to have a little bit of a different approach. And even between those two girls, I can treat one, be a little tougher on one, and the other one, I have to really make sure that I'm, super supportive and just building her up. And same thing with the boys. One I may not be able to say anything about, and the other one I can be tough on and say, hey, pick it up. We need to go. So I think that's one of the biggest things that coaches really need to work on. I think always learning. That's one of the things that being around different players at different skill levels, what I see more times than not from those higher end coaches and higher end players is that, they're always learning. It doesn't matter who. It could be someone that just started skating, but has watched hockey their whole life. They still feel like they can learn something from that person, and even now, especially with technology, you can just hop on and start looking through articles, start looking at YouTube videos, and you can see all different types of philosophies and different types of, plays and systems to run. And even something that Greg tweeted out the other day made me rethink how I want to have, offensive zone face-off and who I want attacking where. So, I think that's just a constant with hockey. There's tons of different ways to do it. And you got to kind of keep trying stuff until something works. And every team's going to be a little different. Something that works for one team may not work for another team that you're coaching. So those are the two biggest things. You got to make sure that you're coaching to those players and then always learning.
That's amazing. And what you just said is exactly what I try to do, is ask myself questions. And then, am I actually thinking about this? I feel like there's so many things that you pick up through coaching, and everyone does them because they've done it for a million years, but they don't actually ask themselves, why are we doing this? And then trying to figure out and having that little self-start to, why are we doing it this way? And then doing the research, or I've never thought of this before, I don't really have a thought on it. Do the research, go out there and come up with something.
Right.
I also
so that was something big.
But, I also think that today's kids, they want to know, you know what I mean? Where maybe when we were growing up and playing, it would have been different where coach says something, so you do it. And that's that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can get away with that anymore. And that's a good thing. So I think it forces coaches to really, be introspective about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and then being able to communicate that.
Yeah. And actually, that's a great point. I think, I think with my team, they don't ask enough, why are we doing this, or how do we get to this point? And so sometimes I've been trying to do a better job of getting in the habit of explaining, why we're doing this, or sometimes I'll have a drill set up and we'll do the drill, for 5 minutes, and then I'll bring everybody in and say, okay, does anybody see where we could potentially do this, or why we're doing this drill? Because in a game scenario, we could do this. So, but that's a great point.
That's hilarious you said that. I was doing a practice on Tuesday, and I was going up to this group, and I'm like, okay, me, guys. You've been around me for a full year now. Why are we doing this drill? And seeing what they remember and what are they actually focusing on when they're doing the drill. I'm like, there's a reason why we're doing this. What is it? And then trying to just watch them fumble over why are we doing this? Yeah. One, it's entertaining. Two, I think it actually starts to get them exactly what you said, trying to ask those questions, trying to understand it. Because I'm a big believer in empowering the players. At the end of the day, I'm not on the ice making those passes. I want to be on the bench, not yelling, shoot, pass, far side, whatever that may be. Because I want them to know it all, have all those questions, and start answering them for themselves. So couldn't agree more. I think that's the best way to go about it, and making sure that it's not about us, it's all about the players, and giving the responsibility. And I call it pushing the responsibility off. By the end of the season, should be doing very little. You guys should be doing most of it, and then continuing to raise that bar each year.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think players don't get enough credit, especially young players. Where I find that whether it's coaches or parents or whoever, they're like, oh, they can't do that, or they can't compete with that team. They're not that good. And it's like, well, because I actually on purpose will throw in every once in a while, we'll throw in a really, really difficult drill, like a drill that I did in college or pros, that even at that level, we're going full speed, but even at that level, it was difficult for us to complete. So I'll throw in a drill every once in a while just to say, and then I'll call them all in and say, hey, just so you guys know, you guys were supposed to fail miserably at that. And you actually did a really good job. I surprised myself. I thought it was going to last for about 3 minutes and you guys weren't going to complete 2 passes and get a shot on net, but you guys actually did it. It was flowing nicely. Everything was running well. And, so don't hold yourself back or don't think down on yourself. If you put your mind to it, you can really do something. And I think that's one of the biggest things because, when I was growing up, and that's what I always try to relate to. When I was growing up, there were a lot of coaches that believed in me, but I think, what really kind of set myself apart for me personally, what I wanted to do with hockey was when I had some coaches that didn't think I had the potential to go to the next level or play at a certain level. And then, whether I was stubborn or dumb, I wanted to say, hey, let me try and see, what's the worst that can happen if I try my best and I see what happens, so that's kind of the biggest thing with young players is trying to get them to believe in themselves and then just try your hardest and don't be afraid about making mistakes. If you're trying your hardest and you make a mistake, I'm not going to be upset with you about that. I just want to make sure that you're trying your best and then we'll make up for it, or we have other things in place. Or if you do make a mistake, we have a goalie in net, we have other defenders and other players out there on the ice that can help out. And even if they score, there's still a lot more time left in the game. We can go back out there and try to score some goals. But that's the biggest thing is, and kind of like you said, hold the players accountable, but make sure that you believe in them, that they know that you believe in them, and try to get them to believe in themselves. I think that's a huge part of it.
And taking that one step further, and this is something I think you both can agree on, you almost have to give the players permission to succeed or take the risk. Like they're almost like, for whatever reason, they've had this thing where I need to ask mom and dad yes or no before I can actually do it. And it's like, it's okay. You can try it. You can succeed. You are allowed to do these things. And like give them that permission to explore that space and grow into themselves.
Yeah. And I think that has a little bit to do with kind of the creativity. And that's been one of the hard things for myself coaching is, trying to get players to be more creative. And so they kind of hold back and they're hesitant to try to do that. So, I try to incorporate drills where, all right, here's the main idea of the drill. Other than that, you guys have to create everything else or you have to do whatever. The thing that I don't like to see is when we're doing a drill and I'm like, all right, here's 3 different options that you can do. And then I'll demonstrate one of them. And then, every line will go. And then every single line does the same thing that I just did. And I go, okay.
So frustrating.
Yeah. So and I'm like, okay, let's make sure that we're trying in a couple other scenarios here. Here's scenario 2, here's scenario 3 again, just in case you forgot. So sometimes I think it's just they're paying attention or they just remember the first one that you talked about or the last one that you talked about, and then that's what all they focus on and work on and do.
Yeah, I'm big on that. Having those parameters and then just letting them figure out. And then I get players coming up to me like, are we allowed to do this? I'm like, I didn't say you couldn't. Right. Let's go for it. Like if you can think of the creativity, just go for it. I'm giving you what you can't do or something that destroys the drill. But other than that, like have at it, guys. Have that creativity. And I think that's perfect. Creating the parameters, letting the guys explore the space. That's freaking huge. And I think that's super big into just developing the awareness and developing that person. Like you said, it's not just about hockey. It's how do we make hockey a transferable vehicle for life skills? That's always the big question for me.
Yeah.
We do a little bit at Akron with that. We call it our Life U program, where we actually have like a whole program on off ice stuff that you won't get in school and those types of things. So I think that's pretty cool. But getting into more on coaching and how you coach, what is maybe some of the greatest things that you've done or some big epiphanies you've had as a coach for your teams or for yourself that's created that? So what's the greatest thing you've done as a coach for yourself?
Oh gosh, in my short coaching career, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different things, because I could even say from from, when early on coaching at Cleveland Heights, helping kids to, make the varsity team at high school. That's something that's great. The kids are super excited about that, happy. And then even some of those kids, because of because they're able to play, it may have kind of helped them to get into a college that they liked and or make a club team, here or there. So that's at that level. With some of the travel hockey, honestly, just seeing kids grow and helping them out and grow as a player. That's some of the best things that I've seen. And not only that, but then also seeing kids want to help out other players. So I also do a program, or I did a program at Cleveland Heights, Learn to Play Hockey and taught hockey. And, just talked a lot with the kids about working on skill, and, told them one of the things that can really help you out to kind of figure out what you're doing with your own body is teaching other players. And I had a ton of the 05s that would always come out and help me out with those little kids. And I think that's terrific. And a lot of the times the players just wanted to come out and do it on their own. I didn't have to ask anybody. I didn't have to tell anybody. They're just like, hey, can I come this Monday? And then for a little bit, I had to tell them, okay, we have to create a sign up because we had too many kids out on the ice, more than we had for the tot hockey. So I think seeing something like that is terrific, because that just shows how much they love the game. And whenever I think about hockey, I just think about how much I love playing it. And how much I do love playing it and being a part of it. And I just want them to have that same love that I've felt for it for however many years, for 30 some years that I've been playing now. But, and that's, I think that's kind of the beauty of the game, and the thing that I love is that I just want them to grow that love for the sport. And then hopefully when they're in my situation too, then now they're wanting to give back. I don't have any kids on any of the teams that I've coached. And I just want to give back to the community. I want hockey here in Cleveland to be as good as it can be, and kids to learn how to play the game the right way. But
that's beautiful.
Other than that, we won a couple small tournaments here or there. Nothing super impressive about that. All the other kids that have been coaching for travel hockey, none of them are at college age yet, but soon. So I think that'll be great if I could help get some kids into college and pros. I think that would be a huge milestone. I would be pretty happy about that. But yeah, like I said, the biggest thing is just seeing the kids grow and grow the love of the game.
And that's what it's really all about, growing the love of the game. If your players are leaving you with more passion for playing and being around it and having a great team experience, I think that's a win. Just having more love when they leave you than when they started with you. So I think Sammy Martin would be one kid that loves the game more than maybe I do even. He's nothing but hockey. We were getting shellacked by basically a team that was way better, and other kids are like, I just want this game to be over, and Sammy's like, why? We're getting to play hockey today. Man, we're getting smoked. You touched the puck like 4 times. I love the enthusiasm. Keep it up. This is what I want to be around right now.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of things that I've kind of gone back and forth in my own head, and that I've kind of battled with, because at the same time, it's like, how much is too much, And so I do talk to my team and my players a lot about whether you want to admit it or not. You're very young, and absolutely you should love every second of it. But at some point, there's going to be a time where you're not going to be able to play, or you're going to be able to play at the level that you want to, or potentially, have in the past. So, but I also think that kind of gives them even more reason to enjoy the moment and really have fun with it, and enjoy every single time that they're able to be out there and playing. And I think that's probably where Sammy kind of, takes that and is really running with it. Because that's one of the things, I'm super happy when I'm out there on the ice. Now it's whether I'm coaching or playing, I have a great time and I really enjoy it. And you never know when you won't be able to get out there and skate around anymore, but hopefully it's for a long time. And so it's kind of heavy, but at the same time, that's part of life. And that's that. And for me, like I said, it helped for me to enjoy it that much more every time I was out there.
It's so refreshing to hear that. Like someone actually is willing to have a hard conversation with a player and a player totally understands it, takes it and run with it. Like you just don't hear much about that. And that's beautiful to me when I hear someone saying that. Because I remember playing for some coaches and they just didn't want to tell you the bad news. And I'm like, just give it to me. Like, come on. Like you're not helping anyone out here. Like just tell me how it is and we'll go on with our business. Like there's no need to be slightly deceitful on this. So I love that. Just open and honest, exactly what it is. About, and especially parents, they appreciate that stuff more than anything else. The worst thing you do is lead them on and then cut them loose with some bad news like that. Just terrible.
Right. And I think, once players see that you're being straightforward and honest with them, they tend to start eventually, show that mutual respect. And I honestly, one of the bigger issues that I have is that I think a lot of kids are used to having like an authority figure as a coach, and like, they're very hesitant to approach the coach and ask questions. And I try to tell them all the time, like, come up and ask questions. If you have a concern about something, you shouldn't be afraid to come ask me. The worst thing that I can tell you is like, no, I don't want to talk about it, but you won't know unless you ask. And I try to, make sure that parents and players understand I'm completely open and wanting and willing to talk about if there's any kind of issue, because a lot of times there's so much stuff going on in a game, even practices too, that you can't pick up or you can't see everything. And so something may happen and it may not seem like a big deal, but it may be a huge deal to that player or to that family. And so you have to respect that, and you have to take action on something and kind of nip it in the bud sooner than later, because you don't want it boiling over for, towards the end of the season or something like that.
The biggest words of wisdom I forgot on this is that bad news never ages well.
Yeah.
It's like rotting eggs. They just get worse and worse. Just got to deal with it right away. So that's why I love Tortorella down there in CBJ. Like as soon as something bad happens, there's not 2 days that go by before that guy's already talked about it with the group. And I think that's why they have that close bond, because it's exactly what you said. You're building that rapport through having that honesty. And I think one thing for me, what you said was letting the players come to you with issues. Like they're able to fight their own battle. That's huge with what we were talking about earlier, of helping that player become better as a person, which then is going to develop them also on the ice. So, Dan, I don't know if you've had any experience with that, but I think that's huge for me, especially as like a college and high school coach, of those kids are starting to fight their own battles and being able to have those conversations that you're going to have as an adult.
Absolutely. And like Jared said, part of our role as coaches is to develop humans, people, and not just hockey players. And that's a huge part of it, is, preparing them for what real life is like, after college or whatever. And, that onus is on us. So yeah, giving them, the platform to have the, this open and honest line of communication is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. That kind of reminds me of, one other thing too, is that, I think a lot of parents are so protective of their players, which I completely understand. Absolutely, be protective and guard them, but they're so protective that they don't want their player to fail at anything. Right. And honestly, most of my youth career, I played on teams that were, terrible. We lost a lot, but that helps to build character. It helps you to learn more. I'm very competitive. And so even though I was on losing teams, whether we're getting blown out, I wanted to get better. And so now I see a lot of families that instead of like potentially their player could potentially get cut, they'd rather just jump ship and go to a different team and go over there. And I think that's unfortunate for the player, because then that player gets a false sense of security that also translates into real life, So what happens when they get fired from their first job or lose their first job? Or get a bad grade in a high school or college course, and they're kind of out there on their own for the first time, that can cause other issues. So that's one thing that I always talk about, and that's what I mentioned earlier, is it's okay if you fail. It's okay if you make a mistake, but, just make sure that it's what you do after you make that mistake. How are you going to react to that mistake? Are you just going to shut down and clam up and just curl up in a ball on the bench, or wherever, or are you going to get back out there next shift and have the best shift of your life? That it's all about how you react in those scenarios.
That's great. That reminds me of PJ Fleck, row the boat. I think that's been the best one for me, is like go to the kids and be like, guys, you just got to keep your oars in the water, keep rowing. You got to have that good compass, make sure you're around good people. But otherwise, if you just take those oars. So I don't know. So for listeners that don't know row the boat, the whole concept around the oar is that's the energy you bring to your life and what you're doing. If you decide to take your oars out of the water and kind of just give up, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to do anything, and you're not going to be able to move on from it. But if you just keep rowing, eventually you're going to achieve what you're going to achieve, or you're going to come on to something that's even better. So always rowing that boat, row the boat. PJ Fleck, who's now at Minnesota, doing a good job there. I don't know. Do you have any mottos or anything that you kind of have? The two that I love are row the boat and then control the controllables. Like, just don't worry about the things that can't affect you. Just get better, go about your business, and do what you can do. Don't worry about anything that you have no control over. Like the refs, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's one of the biggest ones. You know, a lot of players, they sit there and they're worried about this or that, or, you know, stuff that they can, like you said, uncontrollables. You can't control that. And so I always just talk to them. And I guess going back, actually, this is one thing I wanted to go back to is, like you said, I would much prefer to not have to yell anything from the bench and just let my players play. And I try to do that as much as possible. And then once they come back to the bench, that's when I talk with them. That's when I coach them. And that's when I break down scenarios, or even just ask them sometimes, hey, what did you see here? What were you trying to accomplish? Because sometimes the players saw the right play and they're trying to accomplish it. They just didn't execute properly, which happens. Yeah, definitely, you know, sometimes, you know, we're in a rough game. We're away, you know, in a different state. And, you know, refs aren't being favorable to us, and it happens. And I go, you know, most of my career, I've been on teams for whatever reason refs didn't like. And that's something that you can't control. You know, you got to go out there, play tough. And if you know that they're calling something specifically, then do your best to try to not do that and stay away from that. You know, if they're calling trips or holds or whatever, and control what you can control. You can go out there, and again, you can work as hard as you want. You can stay positive, and you can uplift your teammates. And those are the kind of things that we really try to focus on. And oh gosh, I had another. And I guess the other one that I kind of said earlier is, you know, hard work is always gonna, I forget the saying now, but hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, something like that. So
you nailed it.
Yeah, just always putting that, you know, to town there. I'm like, hey, you know, just outwork a team. I don't care if they're better than us. If we outwork them, that's going to give us the best chance to beat this team.
Love that. Really appreciate you coming on here, Jared. As a reward for all of our guests, we're going to allow 2-minute plugs at the end of every episode. So if you have any things you're working on, doing, want to talk about, the floor is all yours for 2 minutes. Your time starts now.
All right. Well, one thing that you had mentioned before, you know, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about my hair. So, and actually a lot of my other friends have been talking about it, but I grew my hair out for about 7 or 8 years. And then when I moved back, I still had it for like 2 or 3 years. But I ended up cutting it for a good cause. I donated it and raised money for St. Baldrick's. So for a good reason. And up until recently, I've been keeping it very, very short. But I kind of decided to let it grow out. So I don't know. I may grow it out till next year. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't know. It might be getting a little thin up top, but
looks great.
Yeah, thanks. But other than that, you know, I want to say thanks to Dan and Greg for having me on. This is great. You know, anytime that you want to have me on again, I'd be more than happy to chat. Just let me know what you want me to talk about. But I don't know. You know, if you want to check out the Cleveland Junior Lumberjacks travel hockey organization, you can check me out on Twitter. I think I'm just JT Labby. I don't really talk too much. I mostly like and retweet stuff that Greg is talking about. And then for me personally,
that sounds right.
Yeah, yeah. And then other than that, my day job, you know, I'm just insurance agent. Been doing that for about 6 years here at Keller National, the national headquarters here in Cleveland Heights. You know, so fun stuff. But no, it's great because my boss, he's a hockey player as well, And he used to coach with me, so he's real flexible. So I love that. But I just want to say thanks again for having me on, and hope I can do it again.
Thank you for tuning into the Hockey IQ podcast. We are Hockey's Arsenal, Greg Revac and Dan Dukart. Together we've come together to create a platform and a community to expand on hockey intelligence, hockey IQ, whatever you want to call it. We're very passionate about seeing this game played smarter and better and continue to develop itself to the next level and staying on the cutting edge of things. So you can find us at Hockey's Arsenal on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We're also at hockeysarsenal.com. From there, you can find some resources and some options to work with us. We're excited to continue this. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, follow, and share. You can also join up for our newsletter as well, where we're going to tackle anything Hockey IQ related. So we're excited to have everyone here and continue to build.
That concludes this week's episode. Thanks for joining us here at Hockey IQ. If you haven't already, take a quick moment to hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and drop a review. If you want to be a great teammate, even recommend us to a friend. You can follow us at Hockey's Arsenal on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the website, hockeysarsenal.com, where you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter. You won't regret it. Catch your buttes here next week for a brand new episode.